advisor is a certified financial advisor, is an entrepreneur, just casual business owner, and is the MD CEO of Celeste Investment Limited. His name is Mr. Leta. Mr. Leta is going to talk us for the rest of 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, you have 15 minutes in the active session. For me, every question I come our way is useful to us. All our clients to improve our financial position.
It's exciting to be. I think the battery. Okay. It's very exciting to be back here again. It's always a pleasure to be blessed and to worship with people who love God. Just to get into the discussion this evening, we will take our reflection from the Gospel of St. Luke, chapter 12, verse 49. So I'll read. Jesus said to his disciples, I have come to set the earth on fire, and how I wish you had already blazed. There's a baptism with which I was baptized, and how great is my anguish until it's accomplished. Do you think I have come to establish peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, a household of 5 will be divided, 3 against 2 against 3. A father will be divided against his son, and a son against his father, a mother against a daughter, and a daughter against her mother, a mother-in-law against her daughter-in-law, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. This is a very interesting reading from the Bible. And Jesus is basically saying, I've come to bring division on earth. I want to draw 3 very important messages from this scripture reading. The first is the fact that Jesus said, I've come to bring fire on earth, and how I wish you have already been listening. We have been talking about the Bible. So whether it's spiritual life and financial life, they can't be true together unless there's some purification. The use of fire here has to do with purification. And by purification, we are talking about changing old habits, old bad habits, whether it's wastefulness, carelessness, and sometimes being a bit nonchalant. And it's one of the biggest faults that a man can have. Sometimes it's not about doing what is wrong or not doing what is right. Sometimes it's not doing anything at all. Oftentimes they play the devil like to get to handle get to the point where they are not doing anything bad. They are also not doing anything good. They are just there. So, the fire is to awaken us, to give us that sense of urgency that we need to change something about whether it's our spiritual life or our financial life. So, fire signifies urgency and instant purification. Because without purification, without those changes, it will be difficult to get the revival we're talking about, and it will be difficult to move forward. The next thing is sacrifice, and here Jesus was actually talking about his own suffering. And he said, there's a baptism with which I must be baptized, and how great is my anguish until it's accomplished. So you can't really change the status quo. You can't really experience that revival without some pain. Fire creates discomfort. So for there to be a true revival, there needs some pain. So whether you're talking about our spiritual life or financial life, to make those changes, sometimes it comes with pains. Whether you're talking about budgeting, it comes with pain. Someone is going to feel maybe through your life, household. And that is the top part of this reading, where Jesus says, I've come to bring division. So sometimes to make those changes, there are people who do not agree with you. And it often starts from internal. Maybe it's the spouse, maybe it's the children. There's always somebody who you will not sit down with. And as human beings, sometimes we are not comfortable with discovery. If something is going to cause problem, we rather not do it because we want peace. What this is asking us to do is to be comfortable in doing the right thing, even if it doesn't sit well with some people, even if those people are in the household. It's also very important that we look beyond the pain that is going to cause and do it from the surroundings what we're saying is right. So, getting into the discussion of today, personal finance is something that we talk about a lot. But a lot of times when people talk about it, there are little things that we often don't pay attention to. I was having a presentation for some people who are about to retire from the government agency, one of the big government agencies we have. And somebody asked the question. So he said that he doesn't understand his children. That when he's talking about how to manage the family finances, the children are saying things he doesn't understand. You know, they are talking about investment schemes that sounds good to. Sometimes they are talking about what's outside gambling. And as an older person, you've seen it all. You've taken those risks. You know what works. You know what will not work. So the first reaction most times is to tell them, no, I don't support that. Is to shut them down. And to impose our will most times. Now, while imposing your will could create division, it's also very important that you understand that no matter what you do, if your plan is not inclusive, if not include the whole family in your plan, you may not achieve the goals that you have set. Because oftentimes, as men, what we do, we say we are doing it for the family. If you are truly doing it for the family, how come you are doing something that sometimes doesn't sit with your family members? You know, every time I come, I see the unity and his wife, and it's so exciting. It's so exciting. Because I tell you, from where I see as an investment advisor, most of the most successful investment programs I've seen are people who include their spouse. They have some of the best programs. The execution is seamless. When you give an idea, they go back and discuss it among themselves. They don't give instant response. They go back, discuss it, and then come back to you with the response. So we cannot truly be building wealth for our family if we are building it without including them. And because most times we don't take them into account, what ends up happening is that you have somebody who has built businesses and the children are not interested. And it's like at the end of the day, you have to bring outsiders to come and it. So it's important to also hear them out, to be in their space, Because again, there are lots you can learn from them. Things have changed. The way the financial market worked in the 90s, in the 2000s, is not how it works today. In those days, you had just two asset classes: real estate, bond, and stocks. Just this thing. But between them and now, a lot has changed. We've had financial crisis that are quite investment from a lot of people. So there are new kind of investment vehicles. So for some of us who are older, we struggle to get into the world. I know back in around 2015 when this whole crypto thing started. Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all sorts of foreign names. I didn't want to hear anything about it because I have also lost a lot of money in 2008, 2009 investing in stocks. So that makes you very risk averse. You don't want to get involved in very risky investments. So I was not hearing anything about it. But as time went on, as I started my own firm, I realized that there were a lot of clients, a lot of young people who need guidance in investing in the same asset class we see in other communities. So I need to ignore them. Because even there, they need guidance not to take the wrong decision. So at that point, I had to put my own money in crypto. Because there's no better way to learn than risking your own money. If you just want to read the pages of newspaper in journals, you're not going to learn it as well as when your money is there. Not like I'm putting a lot of money, but I just put it some money so I get a sense of what is going on. And today, I can guide all my clients, even those who want to invest in crypto, I can give them at least the minimum guidance they need to not make excessive risk. Because what you don't understand, you can't guide. So when it comes to family, you have to be in their space. If they are saying things, sit down, it may be difficult. Listen to them. Act interested, explain this to me, I want to learn about it. And then when you learn about it, you start to ask questions. And when you ask some of the questions, they may even start to see what they are doing wrong from your question. But if you just wait it off, I don't think it's the best way to go about it. So personal finance is extremely important. And today I'm talking about personal finances applies to us as individuals, as it applies to us as family, and even as it applies to us in our businesses. And there are very many important things that I want to touch on this evening. The first is cash flow. Cash flow. So when you are planning your finances, they say cash is a blood that flows through the building business. And once that blood dries, the business is dead. And the same applies to individuals' families. Once that cash stops flowing, a lot of bad things happen. A lot of families have stability, they have peace, because there is money, there is cash. But when you talk about cash flow, there's a difference between cash flow and wealth. The person may have a lot of wealth, but no cash flow. So when we value business, one of the things that I pay very big attention to is free cash flow. Any business has a direct balance sheet, and they don't have adequate free cash flow, it means they can get into trouble. I'm not talking of credit lines, because the business can have credit and where you can borrow from, but it's not the money you have to repay. I'm talking about free cash flow. Cash that is not employed, but they are not going anywhere. It's your cash flow. You can use it to seize investment opportunities when they arise. So if you are planning your finances and you don't need provision for cash flow, it's like playing with fire. And especially for many of us, as you get older, your need for cash increases. Because when you are young, you are working, your short salary will come at the end of every month. You will be actively involved in businesses that are generating cash flow for you. But as you get older, cash flow becomes very important. But here's what I found out about most investments in most families' portfolio is that most assets are tied in liquid assets. Now, it's not that investing in liquid assets is bad. In fact, if you're investing in the stock market, for instance, the first thing I tell you is that you should be ready to hold any stock you are buying for 10 years, 5 to 10 years. If you are not willing to hold a stock for 10 years, there's no point in investing in it. Because it's like starting a business, maybe starting a restaurant business, and the next year, you want the business to give you, let's say you put in 1 million into this business, the next year you want the business to give you 2 million. I mean, it's been unreasonable. Yes, some businesses can do that. For most businesses, it needs time to try. So you can't invest in the stock market and you are expecting massive return the next year. So if you are investing in the stock market, you want to make sure that you are able to wait for at least 5 to 10 years. Again, if you are buying investments, if you are investing in real estate, you also want to make sure that, I mean, for people who are younger, you can put maybe 90% of the investment in real estate. That can be fine. If you are younger, you still getting salary, or you have a business that is giving you cash flow. 90% of the investment is okay. But as you get older, you now need to understand that things have changed. You no longer be working. Your pension may not be enough to supplement your lifestyle. You may have need for more visits to the doctor. Maybe there are children who are still schooling, or grandchildren that pay their fees. So you want to make sure that you are planning your cash flow in a way that meets all of these obligations without being under pressure. So it is important, and it starts by understanding your own cash flow needs. We don't all have to say need for money. There are people who already have invested that is giving fixed rent every year, and it's enough to take care of their needs. Now you are planning your cash flow. There are people who also have investment in very seasoned companies. There was a time banks had dividend yields, banks like Zenith and GTB, they had dividend yields of up to 40%. So there are people who are using the dividend from those companies to sustain themselves. So I built up, but I remember when I started banking, when the first bank, and there's this man that comes almost every 2 months. And when they come with dividend balance. You know, when companies pay dividend, they send you a check and you go back to the bank. Yeah, dividend balance. Not now that the account is spread. So they come to the bank and they come with dividend balance this thick. And this was in 2006. Sometimes you see that dividend running into 10 million. And then it's not like they come once a year, almost every 2 months. They come with dividend of different companies to log into their account. Unless someone who took time to pay that out and plan that at some point I'm going to retire and they're happy for this cash flow, it gives you flexibility. It allows you to maintain the same standard of living that you have had. It also allows you to not let your values die. Because many of us have things we want to do for society, for our community, for our family. We have legacy impact we want to do. But you can't make those impact if you are struggling. Whether you are struggling with your cash flow or you are struggling with overall with your finances. So the first thing is to understand what your cash flow needs are. And once you have that understanding, you are now in a better position to structure an investment that will, by investment portfolio that will help you meet that cash flow. So once natural people come, the first question is, what is the best investment to do? And I can't say it's not like best investment. It's what investment is suitable for you. So if you don't understand your cash flow and you start investing, you are running a risk of having a wrong investment. It's like going to the doctor and saying, what is the best drug to take today? Without finding out what is wrong with you. So cash flow is extremely important. And when it comes to personal finance, one of the painful aspects, remember in the beginning, we talked about the need for sacrifice, the need to ask for fire, the need to experience some pains. One of the pains that is necessary when you are planning your finances budget. The federal government of Nigeria prepares the budget every year. Even though we know that often our budget is more about expenditure than about revenue. But in any case, every year the government prepares the budget. So this is how much we expect to earn, this is how much we expect to spend. The difference will borrow to supplement. At business level, every business has a role with a budget. So if you run a business and you don't sit down to budget at the beginning of the year, the business is just hand to mouth. Because at the beginning of the year, you need to set expectation. How much money do I need to make this year? To meet it. That is how to run a business responsibly. If you run a business by waking up every day and jumping into the business, you are never going to maximize the potential of that business. So you must start at the beginning of the year by budgeting, by asking yourself, where is this business today? How many more customers do we need to have at this level? How much money can we aim to make this year? How are we going to spend this time for this money we're making? Do we need to buy some more fixed assets? Do we need additional vehicles for this business? Do we need to open a new branch? Do we need to do more computers? So those decisions we must itemize them at the beginning of every year. Without that, we can have a successful business. And this also is important at the family level. It's important at the family level. I mean, for many of us, we hardly have personal needs and personal experience. I hardly have any financial discussion with my dad. In fact, sometimes I think about it and I'm like, it's like this man made me not to even realize my calling anyway. Because I remember when I was in secondary school, I come back from school, and my dad buys a lot of newspapers. You can buy Punch, Vanguard, The Guardian, the same thing. That's all three of them. So I think you can go through, and I was always fascinated with the portion that has Nigeria Stock Exchange Summary. So I think to him and asked him, can you explain to me what this is? And he said, go and tell that in there too young for us. And because of that, one of my friends, his name is George, one day he told me his mother buys shares. So I told him, I now beg you, don't let me tell your mother to explain this thing to me. So you come and explain to me. Because of course I was too small to go to his mother and start asking her, to do like this guy doesn't have respect. So if you go to his mother, as a child now, the mother will explain and you come and explain to the God. To be honest, he didn't explain anything listening to me. Apparently, he didn't have the same interest I had. So whatever I have told him, he may not even pay attention. So I'm just drawing this out that many of our parents, because of their own experience, because of the amount of information at their disposal, did not include us. But for me, we're included in a way because we have a business and every one of us was made to participate in the family business. So probably build the spirit of entrepreneurship we must very care. So, but the operated within their own limits. So, for us who are more informed, it's very important that we have more inclusiveness, more structure in our family finances. Today, most families are run as a business. If you have a family office, there are families that are run as a proper business. It's incorporated. I mean, I give an example, although this is a stretch. Dangote has a family office, and their assets managed in New York. So that family office has a dedicated investment team, and all they do is they manage the affairs of their family. They have a board, a decision-making board, that will likely include himself, his children. So they will give mandate to the investment management firm to manage it. So this is at a very high level, but at our own little level, we may not have the resources to go that far, but at our level, we can give a structure where there's a family making decisions, there are standards. This is what you attain to qualify to lead the family in decision making. If you have a board, this is how board members are selected. So it may not be that formal. But at the minimum, there should be a structure around how we manage our family finances. So budgeting is an extremely important part of it that cascades from the national level to the company level, to the family level, and to the individual level. But in my experience, this is something that people have to. But the most successful businesses budget. If you read financial reports of some of the blue chip companies around the world, every quarter they give an estimate of how much profit they hope to make at the end of the year. Because they are working with the numbers, they are planning, they are reviewing it every time. If there are changes, they provide an estimate. To quote to many companies' earnings call, they are telling you that in 2026, we expect that our profits will grow by 50%, and most times they will usually meet that benchmark of this plus or minus 5 to 10%. The variance is not so large. So we budget in planning there's precision. You have no stability. You know what to expect. Things will not take you by surprises. And of course, savings. Savings is important. One of the biggest problems we have in Nigeria is that we are not saving. Even at the national level, we run an economy where we consume. Everything we do is consumed. When you look at the budget is saying we expect to make $8 billion this year. But we expect to spend 18 billion, the rest will go. Because the culture of saving is not in us. We all know back in 2014, we had governors who actually came up and said, we don't want you saving money for us. Share it to us, let us spend it. People actually did that. We don't want savings. We don't trust that you can save for us. So give us the money. We would rather spend it than to allow you to save it. It makes no sense. And that's how. And you can hardly separate what happens at the national level from what happens at the smaller level. Those who have invested in the stock market are expected to run that. The Nigerian stock market has been terrible since 2009, or about decades. It's been terrible. We've seen some recoveries since 2023. We've seen some recoveries, so it's been terrible. But do you know why the performance of the stock market has been terrible? It's simply because our growth rate as a country has also been terrible. Nigeria growth rate has been around 4% for so long. It's been very terrible. A country like Nigeria that is developing, that is still growing, should be growing at minimum at about 6-7%. The last time we started anything within that region was in 2014. In the last 10 years, our growth has not exceeded 3.5%. So, if you're a business and you're operating in Nigeria, this is what will happen to you. You may be doing well for 2-3 years, but over time, the economy will pull you down to its level. So, you cannot consistently operate at a higher level better than the economy in which you operate. So, if you're a global fund manager, you are in New York, you will invest money around the world. And you are trying to allocate funds to emerging markets because that's what these global fund managers do. They sit down in their office in New York, in London, and they say we have this $500 billion for investing in the emerging market. Do you know how they go to invest it? So they are not going to say, they are not going to say there is a Zenith Bank in Nigeria that is doing well. Let's go and invest on them. No, that's not their growth. They start from the economy. What's the growth rate of Kenya? What's the growth rate of Ghana? What's the growth rate of South Africa? The country that has a better growth rate is where they are going to allocate more resources. It's when the money comes into that country that the fund manager in that country will not select the specific industries to invest in. So if your economy is not growing at a high rate, global fund managers will not even put money there. And since that money left Nigeria, we have not justified the money return. But I can bet you that if you see our economy growing at 6, 7, 8%, and it does that consistently for a 5-year period, no won't believe what will happen with the stock market. It will be crazy because most Nigerian businesses are value. So I'm going to tell this out that what happens at the national level is what cascades down to units, family, states, family, individuals. So it's even more pressing at the time like this for us to be different, to take a different route. Because if we continue to operate the same way, the fate of an average Nigerian becomes average. You may say you have money, but eventually the country will pull you down to its level. And I'm sure we cannot aspire to it. Because when you open your phone in the morning, they are requests. When you are going to bed, they are requests. Some are waiting for you to wake up. And if you say you are going to meet all of them, I mean, you would soon be like one of those who are good. That is sad reality. So for us to sustain our finances as individuals, as family, as business, we need to do things a bit differently. You can't do what every other person is doing and not end up like that. Tax management is also an area where we are. And if you look at the body language of this administration, there's a lot of reforms around tax. In fact, I was reading somewhere recently that there's now an app where you can calculate your personal income tax. So the thing with tax is that you may not be paying your taxes. And because we have very few resources to track who is paying and who is not paying, we get the resources. But any day you need something from the state, they are going to ask you to show your tax. In fact, at a point, tax clearance certificate was a requirement for getting FX from the central bank. When dollar was really scarce. I know at one point, one of the things against artists was that he was not paying taxes. And he was going to remove the blessing. So, as Christians, we have a duty to the state. We also have a duty to ourselves. When it comes to taxes, I feel like it's more a duty to ourselves than a duty to the state. Now, I had an experience. I went to the tax office close to my office because we were trying to work on our personal income tax, and I was having a conversation with them. So I was asking them about what if I earn money outside my salary? I have other sources of income, and I want to also file all of those in my tax return. Do you know what the tax guy told asked me? Say, are you normal? That what do you want to do? What is the government doing for you? This is the tax office I was telling you. Say, what is the government doing for you that you want to say, don't go and find the one that is trusted that you are working, this is your salary, without the better tax clearance. So, we have a big problem in the country. This is what happens. Any day the tax people see who you are, the same day, go down and bring out all the records, all that, they'll show it to you and tell you how much you should pay as tax. And then that gives them a window to now tell you, oh, so if you don't want to pay this much, settle us, give us something. So it's a very confusing situation, but I feel like it's always best to try to do the right thing. Because most times when you are doing the right thing, Oga knows that if you take time and prepare your own, prepare it judicially, keep your reports, prepare your report. You know, some years you may not even need to pay tax if you make losses. And you get a tax credit that you can claim in subsequent years when you start making profit. Yes. Yes. Yeah, I know when I started my business, the first 2 years we were making losses. We have tax credit, which we have now used since we started making profit. So, but if you are not filing, if you are not preparing, keeping records, any day they see you out, they will put all your account statement and assume that every money that entered your account is profit. But if you kept on your own invoices, this is what I paid for, this is how much money came, I used it to buy this. It makes life easier for you. And when they see that you kept your record, they have little or nothing to say. So they like a disorderly society where people are doing the wrong thing because it gives most of these guys the opportunity, the willing to exploit them. So for us to be diligent, for us to be responsible, and these things are easy. You don't need to do an accountant. You don't need to do an accountant to understand the basics, to understand what you should do. And when it comes to investing, even my ability to tell investments that are tax exempt. If you are knowledgeable, the president talked about the fact that information can change your narrative as an individual. If you have information, you know that if I do this transaction, it's taxable. If I do this, it's not taxable. So you know. So it's very, very important that we pay attention to these things. Even if you don't intend to do, at least have the knowledge. Have the knowledge. Know that, okay, this is what the implication of running this business. So if I'm to file tax, this is how much I should pay. At least have that knowledge. Because when it comes to business, when it comes to investing, it is the person who has the most knowledge that makes the most money. If I know what I know, I'm going to make money off. The less you know, the more likely it is that someone is going to take advantage of you. So for my clients, I don't like clients who just come and say, take this money, go and let me invest it. just come and tell you what is going on. And then, so if you don't want to know what I'm doing, and they say, no, I trust you. It's not a good plan to have. I prefer plan 2. It's easier for me to work with them. It's easier for me to send them a letter and say, it's okay. Yeah, go ahead. Because they understand what to do. And those ones who tell you, just go and do it, I trust you. The day something goes wrong, they'll come the whole blame on you and make you look like you stole your own. But when the person has full knowledge of what they're doing, they know what is going on. They anticipate it. If they see the news on the television, they know this news will affect my investment. They start calling me directly. Have you seen what is going on? I say, I'm seeing it. And they start discussing what we do around this. But those who don't know, they are losing money and they are not even aware. There's an announcement, they are not even aware that this affects me. And they are politicizing it. Sometimes the president says something and you see people arguing for political angle. And what are you talking about how this will affect your business? And what you are looking at, you are looking at it from the point of ABC and wherever the position is today. So, tax management is important for individuals, families, for businesses. And then risk management. I don't want to call it insurance. Risk management. Sometimes people hear of, in Nigeria today, this used to happen abroad, that somebody passes on, and what the family is busy doing what the family is busy doing is fighting for property. And sometimes they forget to remember the person who has passed on. So, being a man can be very tough sometimes. So, you have to be, I think it's a book of Proverbs that says, wisdom builds the house and understanding establishes it. So, you have to be wise when you're managing your assets. We talk of me, a lot of people see me as something that if I write it, it means I'm going to die also. No, it's not true. I know one of the secondary school, there's this prayer we say every night before we go to bed. So one day I was arguing with my sister, she was talking about that. We're arguing about me, like say, she doesn't like people talking about me, are you planning to die? And I'm telling her that from secondary school, we used to say that prayer every night before we go to bed, which is, may God grant us a peaceful, a quiet night and a peaceful death. This was as a child. Am I dead? No. And this is one prayer that people don't even know they need to say. The people who did not die peacefully. It is a gift from God that you die peacefully. There's a day that is appointed not to every man. And we always pray for God to give us that long life. But even no matter how long you live, how you go is also very important. Are you working in that friendship with God? There are people who die in a plane crash. There are people who die, God forbid, kidnappers taken to the bush, kill the person. The family doesn't even know them by corpses. So death is bad, but there are even terrible ways that people lose their life. It's even a prayer that is important that we pray to God to grant us peace on the day that is appointed unto us. So back to what I was talking about, writing will. It's not a culture that many of us have. But even today, writing a will is not enough. Because you might write a will, and somebody who feels agreed will take that your will to court. And nobody will be able to execute it until the court case is resolved. And a lot of people write will without information. A lot of people don't even know that there are people you cannot disinherit. There are people you can't say I'm not putting in your way. They have, because they are related to you, they will be in your way. If you don't know them, when they go to court will do. If somebody is legally married to you, you can't say I'm not putting the person in your way. In fact, there are countries that the person have a fixed possibility of your estate, whether you put them or not. So if you don't put them, that one that is there, we definitely go to them. We are now aware of this because in Nigeria, will is not something that's popular, and then even where there are people who are disinherited don't know anything about it. Also because they don't even know they have a right. There are people who cannot disinherit. People who are biological children, and the spouse. So long as people were spouse before the past, you cannot disinherit.
Is it that married?
Yes, legally married. In fact, there was a case where, I don't know how true this is, they were saying that if you have somebody that you are sending money, there are people who are maybe a girlfriend, and you are sending money to her regularly, she can even use that as a ground to ask for a stake in your estate. That one woman that you are responsible for her daughter. We are the one who decided to, if she can produce evidence, if that person can produce evidence that they were consistent with maybe a little bit on a monthly basis, and it's not a problem. It means that you have an obligation to the court will listen to the person. So again, the awareness is not there. And because of that, a lot of things in Nigeria people get away. It was something like there's an act, the NSSF Act says that anybody who is injured at the workplace will go to approach the NSSF and just social commission. If you are injured at your place of work, you have the right to go there and ask for money to take care of yourself. It's their responsibility, but a lot of Nigerians are not aware. And it doesn't matter if your company is paying their own, because all companies are required to register with them and make contributions to them. So whether your company is paying or not is not a problem. Once you sustain any injury or you die at work, they have that responsibility. But again, because people are not even aware of this, it's like they get the routine, they don't have that. Exactly. Anybody, government, private. So information is very, very powerful. And so when people plan the disposition of their estate, today there are insurance policies people take. In Nigeria today, there are people who go to insurance company and say, give me an insurance policy that if I die, the insurance company will come and bury me. In Nigeria, we don't do this. I have friends in insurance and I say people are taking that policy. Insurance works, but you must read what the terms are. I was discussing with somebody and he said he did a life insurance, a 10 life insurance. And the question I asked him is, have you been paying your premium? He said he forgot. So and again, it's easy to forget. I have one, I don't even know the day I'm supposed to renew it. Because when you read it properly, it's supposed to be once it's due for renewal, Yes, exactly. Once it's due for renewal, you should go and renew the insurance. But a lot of people forget. And unfortunately, in Nigeria, there's very high level of this. Maybe the insurance agent who sold the policy to you has resigned from that company. So there's nobody to remind you that you need to renew this. So it also becomes part of the things you need to put in the plan. It's okay, I have this policy, it's due for renewal, so I renew it at this point in time. There are also times where you assess and you see the person says they have an insurance policy, and I say, how much is it? And you look at the amount and it's not enough, based on the current lifestyle of the family. So if you are doing a policy, you should also make sure that it's enough to take out for the lifestyle of the family. I think 45 minutes, I'm almost done. So there are also other ways one can dispose of the assets outside the will structure, because writing a will can be problematic. As I said, you can end up with cost and take years to get the will. Somebody who did not intend will force his way into the will and get access to your estate against your wish. So there are ways to take care of these things even while the person is alive. And one of those ways is what they call intervivos wealth transfer. Intervivos means while you are still alive. If you if you want to give something for somebody while waiting when you are dead, when you can simply transfer it to the person. You may be a business where you give some stake in that business. So if you have a business and you give the person a 20% stake in that business, nobody will fight something that is already in its place, like this person has a stake. When you have one, it's only your own stake that people can fight over, not what belongs to someone else already. So those can happen. The problem that a lot of people have is, if I transfer it to you, mismanage it. So we can put that in a trust. There are trustees around the country today. When managed, regulated by the exchange, we can put the money in the trustee and give the money as to how the money will be invested and when the money can, when the beneficiary can have access to that money, transfer of the trust and have that structure for the person. The last thing is debt management. Borrowing is not a bad thing. However, if borrowing is for consumption, then it's something that we need to watch. Because it's something I was saying something. When you borrow to invest in risky, to make risky investments, when that investment goes down, your loss will be double. Because now you are not only suffering from the loss of the investment, you are also suffering and you have to pay back the money you have borrowed. So when you are borrowing, you borrow with wisdom. So in closing, we discussed a lot of things. As individuals, we need to ask ourselves one question: what are those areas where I may be lacking? And find something to do about it. As families, we need unity of purpose in financial decisions, so we are not operating in isolation. As a business, most businesses, knowingly or unknowingly, businesses are actually, when you run a business, you are running for the benefit of society, whether you realize it or not. I wish I could talk more to emphasize it, but if you are running a business, you may think you are running it for the good, but it's not true. You are running it for the benefit of society. And how do you know this? If you run a business, you are going to be happy, you are going to pay them, you are going to change their lives. you are going to pay tax to the government. And the tax you are paying will be used for other people's welfare. So, if you know this, then you will want to make sure that your business owns society and owns God. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I think the President had asked that there should be able to ask questions. So maybe I'll start by asking you questions. I thank you so much for your very enlightening words to encourage me towards our finances. You say we cannot be building wealth from you without including your spouses. You know, some people are blessed with very good spouses, some are blessed with generous spouses. I'm not talking about man and woman. The spouse are the friend, and then the man. And when you often now put your best together, you find that one day just be the time that you spend it. So sometimes it's difficult, unless you are blessed by God, to have a spouse that is understanding. Because you may be saying your spouse feels that you have money or value something, but you are looking at the future. So I don't know whether you still want to encourage us that you must invest in your spouses if you are convinced your spouse is not the type that likes investment. Two, I'm also talking about you said you made mention about paying school fees for your grandchildren. You know, the world is getting more selfish. I think I hold my responsibility only for my children. Their grandchildren, my grandchildren, my children to take care of them. And then we are talking about investment. See, this is an adventure. At our age, you say encourage us to invest in, or we should have done that before we retire. Because now when we invest in risky venture, we will not sleep well. And it adds more to your health problem. So my children always say that enjoy the fruit of the earth. So when you now encourage me to go into investment, real estate is a risky business in Nigeria. You might have a plot which you have been dutifully paying ground rent in CFO. One rent just comes in and goes on ground of public interest. And what do you do? If you wasted your time, you can't fight government, you can't fight them. So, when you have to risk, sometimes you even invest in that. You travel abroad, you have a flowing income, and sometimes you live it for 5 years in the the manager inside the bank will connect and do that. You will come back, you are complaining with this. You go to the court, they have a full-fledged legal department to engage for the next 10 years. So it's also very risky. I will not occupy so much time. One of my friends is late now. During that famous stock area in 2004-5, we were still buying stuff. Some of us just like using the briefcase, not care what happens. My friend now bought the UBA called him and said, buy a stock of 3 million, we match it, and that million. He was so happy, and he called me and said, why would they buy for you? They can as well buy themselves and matching it for themselves. Why are they inviting you? I said, their own shares. I said, I'm going to pay. My friend did. Unfortunately, after how many years he said the stock has crashed, and he's now going in 700,000. He said he was going to court. I said, don't go to court. They have a legal department. They will engage you. He went to court. One boy I was just saying, he won the first case. The court said they should pay him back his money. Yes, he now went for an appeal. The bank went on an appeal. He lost that appeal. The case went to Supreme Court. That's one thing the man does that. I don't know whether the case is continuing or not. What I'm trying to tell you is that first in Nigeria is very risky business. So when you are investing, ask God to give you wisdom. Ask God to also intervene on your behalf. Because it's easier to say, but in the practical reality, it's a very dangerous thing. Thank you.
Very valid additions. So let me start from the point of the spouse. We've seen things with spouses. There are people you see, and it's one of the spouses that deliberately trying to ruin the family's finances. So, again, this is the general discussion here. All things being equal, it's important to include the spouse. But if the spouse is someone who is injurious, then it only makes sense. It's only wise for you to find a way to exclude them from those. And thankfully, when it comes to investing for us, it's one they manage to give us their rewards. If you come with your wife and she opens an account, if you come alone in her name, not a general account, if you come back to me and ask me what account was your wife account to, you won't get it. I won't even tell you she has an account. It's strictly between me and her. You can't come and ask for any information on that account, whether it's in the existence of that account. We consider it a very serious information. So it depends on what the family decides to do. However, like I said, very important. If one spouse is not cooperative and you don't want to in terms of educating them, bringing them up to speed, and yet they are changing, then it's only advisable that you don't exclude your problem. But however, it's part of the inconveniences that sometimes you have to deal with. Not just in marriages, in relationship with others. I was doing something yesterday that said, don't expect the same. That it's even unfair to expect the same from everybody. There are people who do not meet up to certain standards. And demanding that they meet a standard is selfish. So when it comes to investing, you have to decide on what to share and what not to share. Then you talk about the risk that comes to investing. As I always say, I don't have an investment advice for everybody. I only have investment advice for individuals. If you are older, you don't come and say you want to invest in crypto or stocks. There are not many people. If you look at my WhatsApp status, we're talking about stocks. Even for a young person, you do not take all your money and put into stocks or bonds. But as you get older, your risk appetite should drop. Your risk appetite, the amount of risk that people should drop. Most older investors today, when they buy is government bonds, treasuries. Why? Because at least you know the federal government will pay. And when I'm talking about bonds, I'm talking about sovereign bonds issued by the federal government, not bonds issued by corporates. The reason they don't have faith in the government is that worst case scenario, they print money and pay. Inflation. They'll damage inflation, print money and pay. It's a worst case scenario. So again, when you're investing in bonds, be careful between the domestic currency bond and foreign currency bond. Mention them. The Nigerian government issues bonds in naira and dollars. They can print naira, but they can't print dollars. So if you take dollar and lend to the government, if they can't sell enough food to pay you back, they will default. They will give you naira like this. Or they can give you naira. Well, again, they can't give you naira because most bonds are held by global investors. So you can't ask a JP Morgan to come and collect naira for a dollar. And it's not possible to select investors in Nigerians collect naira, foreigners collect dollar. So if the sovereign bond, sovereign global, the chances that they can afford is high. However, if you are lending money, you are taking very, very low risk. And I talked about borrowing to invest, especially when prices are rising. It's one of the errors people make. Price of crypto is $120,000. Crypto has done 50% and 100% and that is why you want to borrow money to go and buy more so that you can make more money. You are playing with fire. Stocks have done 37% this year. Because your friends are telling me I've made money with stock and you're going to borrow money to go and buy. The long and short of it is that when you are borrowing to invest, be careful. Be careful. If the market is down, let's say the stock market is down and everybody is complaining that they don't see in the stock market, that is the right time to grow. Because prices are cheap, that is the right time to grow. Not when prices are high. Unfortunately, people don't do that. People don't borrow money to buy anything investment when prices are crashing. Fear gives them and they are even selling the ones they have. So the human mind works in reverse. When you should be borrowing, you won't borrow, you are scared, you are selling everything. And when you should never borrow, you are excited, you are borrowing. So you borrow with wisdom. I don't know if I talk about everything, but the key takeaway from what we said is that you do not involve your spouses or your family mindlessly. You may even have a child that once he knows that an investment is thinking about to get rid of it and sell. So you have to look at it with wisdom. And then when it comes to investing, as you age, you lower the risk. Thankfully, we have government loans, we have treasury bills. And that is the default for any local investors.
Thank you very much. I guess the grandmother in person and someone has a question. Our time is fast spent. Please all to thank the president of SLM.
That business will serve so if I start to cite at the most, I'm an existing business. I'm not doing a lot of business that is the same thing. Offer service, great value, offer service. I'm not offering value, creating value on our services. I don't really get this business.
Yeah, he's still a business, but that is where responsibility to the society comes in. Because if you realize that this business is for society, then you want to run that business in a way that you're not making losses. I give you an example. You look at somebody like that. On the surface, it looks like he's doing all this business for his own profit. But ask yourself, for all the money he's making, how much can he take from himself? With the money he has made, we have achieved national sustenance in sin. We don't report him to Nigeria. Through his businesses, the whole money he made from cement, what is he doing with it? He used to do with the refinery. Now we are refining in Nigeria. So ultimately, he's going to need all of his assets. So we may think he's making all the money for himself, but in actual fact, he's doing all of it, and he too believes that he's making all of his money for himself. But what is he doing? And he's spending money, no. He's always going to recycle it back in the economy, in the society. And at the end of the day, he's for the good of society. He's employing for his paying salaries, his good clothes, his hope I'm not someone like that I'm paying for.
The price is still high in Nigeria, but
But those of Evaluation of
He may be wrong with the pricing. He may be wrong with the pricing, but at the end of the day, even if it's exploiting, the moment this comes back,
And there are corporate social services that we are doing.
the corporate social responsibility.
Most of the corporations,
Yes.
corporate
Corporate
social service.
use roads.
But to say that cancer is without knowing it, then competing with one another, do so for the benefit of self. Let them see if you act in the way they are making money, and they expect you to by the end of the day, the self benefits at the end of the day.
Thank you.
Members fire, most citizens are not.